Welcome to Laser Reviews. Today I'm talking about Poltergeist 3 from 1988, the final movie in the Poltergeist Trilogy. I already made videos about the first two movies in the trilogy, you can check them out if you want to. If you haven't seen the first two movies, you probably shouldn't watch the third one, as it is a sequel, is a chronological sequel to the second film. So I don't really understand why you would go in and watch the third film, just out of nowhere. You do you, but I wouldn't recommend it. And if you haven't seen the first and the second video I did recommend both the first and the second Poltergeist movie. The first one is a genuine horror movie gem. The second film is just really batshit insane, and I like it for that reason. So we'll talk about the third one today. I will of course spoil some things relevant to the plot, but I will keep spoilers mostly to the first half of the film. There are some scenes later in the movie that I do want to bring up, that I do want to highlight, especially some effects later in the movie. But I'll try to remove the context, just so that I don't end up spoiling these things for you, in case you end up wanting to watch this movie for yourself. I'll also say this is probably not going to be a long review. There's honestly just not that much to say about the movie, so I think I should just start with a brief plot summary, and then I'll go into some of the things I want to emphasize. The only recurring character in this film is Heather O'Rourke playing Carol Ann. I need to bring this up. I need to one thing this movie will be notorious for, and something that honestly also the first Poltergeist is notorious for, is that Heather O'Rourke died at the very young age of 12. There were a lot of urban legends and theories about how Poltergeist was a cursed movie set and it basically killed off Heather O'Rourke, which is, as sad as her death is, no. But yeah, Poltergeist 3 is the last movie she ever starred in, and it's sad. I mean, it needs to be addressed. Like, this is the last movie she will star in. This is her final legacy. She did star in a few TV shows as well, but yeah, the Poltergeist trilogy is just, that's her legacy. That's what she gave the world. And it's sad. And it's so sad that that's just what I'll say. It's sad. Following the events of the second movie, the family decides to send Carol Ann to live with her aunt in Windy City, Chicago. And the one problem that does exist with this franchise is when you use child actors, they obviously grow older. So I don't know how old Carol Ann is supposed to be in this movie. She is 11 or 12 when she plays the role, but she does behave more like a 9-10-year-old, if not younger. So that is a bit odd. Of course, it seems to be that it's taking place right after the second movie. And the second film, of course, seems to take place at less than a year after the first movie. But the first movie came out in 1982 and this came out in 1988. So there is some problem with her character that now she looks quite grown up. I mean, yes, okay, she's still 11 or 12, but she's playing this young girl. So that does already kind of add some cognitive dissonance to the movie. It's not too bad, but given that she's a central figure in the movie, it does make it a bit more difficult to really get immersed. And that's just a minor problem in the movie, but a lot of these minor issues do add up in this film. So the movie opens up with her in her room in Chicago on the, 20th floor. They're really high up with these big windows. It's a big glass apartment building. She's playing with this toy, and I think it's not exactly a toy, it's something that is supposed to help you spell things. Again, that also, how old is she? Would you give this to an 11-year-old girl? Is this something you give to a 9-year-old girl? I don't know. I have never seen them in real life. I don't know when you would give children this to help them spell things, but that's, yeah, okay. Minor thing aside, she's playing with this thing in her room, and she sees a weird figure outside of her window. First, it looks like a window cleaner, but it turns out to be the preacher, I think is what they call him. The preacher of the second film. Only they hired a different guy to play him. It doesn't look like the preacher anymore. But from my understanding, the preacher of the second film is back. That's how I understood the plot. I could have been missing something, but they seem to really, like, he found you, he was after you. The preacher, he was a preacher in the second film. A lot of things added up to make it suggest that this was the same guy from the second film, even though it's not actually the same guy. Again, another minor plot issue, but it is what it is. You can't always get the same actress back. Maybe he had died or something, I don't know. Anyway, speeding up things a bit. So the rest of the cast, so the family here, the aunt is played by Nancy Allen. Always lovable Nancy Allen. I do like my Nancy Allen in movies. Nancy Allen's daughter is played by Stacy from Wayne's World. You know, Stacy.
Hi.
And then we have the incredibly underrated Tom Skerrit playing they don't use the word uncle, so the husband of the aunt. Tom Skerrit is so lovable in this movie. He's chewing the scenery. He's a really good actor. I don't know why we haven't seen him in more movies. He's really good. Oh, I don't know if he's dead now. He was really good in that case. Tom Skerrit is good. You should watch more Tom Skerrit movies.
Look, you take the point, I'll take the rear. If you need air, call it in.
So Tom Skerrit is this very nice guy who's really taking well care of Carol Ann. It's revealed that the aunt is really not happy with being an aunt. I don't know exactly why, but the family relationship is really bad. She doesn't even feel like this little girl's related to her. I don't know if she feels her family is crazy. I don't know why she doesn't want to be related to this girl, but that's a big plot element. And of course it's sad that this girl is away from her family. She has to live with her aunt and uncle, I think it's for half a year. They say until August, and it's around Christmas time, or at least it's winter in Chicago when the movie opens up. Yeah, that's just a dynamic that I think is good because it does remind me a bit of the dynamic in Dark Water. A mother who doesn't really like her child, and then the child starts seeking out maybe other parental figures, or tries to do things to earn her mother's love, and then at the end, the mother has to take on this role, to accept this role. I mean, there are a lot of movies that do this, and I think that's a very nice idea. It is a dynamic when done right, works well. I think it's a bit underdeveloped, underutilized in this movie, but it is there, and it does work. It's not great, but it does work.
Not great, not terrible.
So that's the basis. That's our main cast. Except there are two more people. So I said, actually, I made a mistake. There's another recurring character. The medium is back. The short woman. The medium, whatever she's called in the other movies. She's back. So that's nice, having her back. And then there is the chief psychologist. Or psychiatrist. Or whatever he is. Because Carol Ann is enrolled in a school for extremely gifted children. So they believe she has a very high IQ, but that she can create mass hysteria and mass hypnosis, or...
You think she's able to create some sort of mass hysteria?
No, not really. It's more like mass hypnosis.
Well, they're trying to explain why she can convince other people that ghosts are real and that weird things happen. Being men of science, they of course don't believe in the supernatural, and they're trying to explain everything away, especially this chief psychiatrist or psychologist or teacher, whatever he is. And him trying to understand Carol Ann, he forces her and pushes her to reveal her past, especially what happened prior to moving to Chicago. So what happened in especially the second movie, but also the first movie. Meaning she tells him about the preacher, and her recollecting the events so many times, and keeps saying out the name of this entity so many times. That creates a bond between the entity and her. Meaning the preacher now knows her and will find her. The entity, the preacher, whatever you want to call it, that thing goes by many names in this movie. Or it doesn't, and I'm just having a bad memory. And it is when this thing finds her and knows her location that the medium, while having coffee with a friend or colleague or whatever, realizes that the girl is in danger and sets out to find her. I think she's in California, so it takes a while for her to show up. And that's the main premise. Carol Ann is being hunted and haunted by a dangerous entity, the one from the second film. Psychiatrists, psychologists find it very difficult to believe her and try to find scientific reasons for what is happening, even when the doctor also sees, or the psychiatrist also sees, a hand throw a cup at a window. His excuse is, oh, actually it was mass hysteria that made you destroy that mirror with your coffee cup. That's what happened, not me seeing this thing throwing it at it. I understand why. I mean, honestly, the movie kind of tries to write it off as, oh, these are just naive, stupid scientists, but if you don't believe in the supernatural, you don't believe in the supernatural. It takes a lot to convince you, I believe. For that reason, it does kind of make sense that it tries to make these scientific explanations, but from the viewer's perspective, us knowing the danger is real, it seems silly. And then also the aunt and uncle dynamic, you know, one caring parent, one not so caring parental figure. Everything is seemingly happening in the same building. That at the bottom of the building there's an exhibition. I think it's the aunt's art that is being exhibited there. And I think the uncle figure, Tom Skerrit, is playing a building manager or something. At least he seems to have some responsibility for the building. And that's why the entire movie just takes place in this building. It's not so much one set, because this building has many different... Because this is a huge building and it has so many things in its complex, but it is essentially a one-setting movie. And it's not just a one-location film. It's also mostly a 24-hour movie. That from when the movie starts to when it finishes, 24 hours passed, give or take. And that means that Nancy Allen's daughter, Stacy, A teenager has this love interest who invites her to a party at his place in the same building, and although she's supposed to babysit Carol Ann in the evening, Carol Ann kind of just allows her, like she's saying, I'm old enough to take care of myself. Therefore, Stacy goes to the party, and a lot of shenanigans happen there. That's what you have going on. Carol Ann being alone much of the movie. You have the psychiatrist who's also out to help, but doesn't really believe her and tries to do, well, the wrong things to help her. You have the aunt-uncle dynamic, who are mostly not present, at least for the first half of the movie, and are basically leaving her to deal with things herself because they don't really believe her. And then you have the teenager who is trying to live her life but also takes on responsibility when it comes to it. A lot of good dynamics, and that's honestly what I will say about the plot. I will go in to talk about some of the details of the movie, so they are related to the plot, but they will also be a bit more in the spoiler territory. So the movie is a big departure from the first and second film and how the evil entity manifests itself. It first has warning signals before it really shows up, such as windows cracking. In this building, all the elevators' windows crack, and they're trying to figure out why this is happening. Another thing it does is it brings cold. So the ventilation system freezes over, and they're also trying to figure out why this is happening. And then the evil entity shows up. A bit as they have done before, the evil entity does manifest itself in mirrors. So sometimes the audience sees it, but people can't see it. And one thing it does do now is it can multiply itself. So you have some cool scenes. A lot of the movie takes place in one hallway, and there is one scene where when Carol Ann is left alone, you just see how this evil figure just follows down the parents or follows down the people leaving the hall just by opening doors that are of course actually close in the world we see, but is in the spiritual realm or whatever it is, opened by this creepy guy who stands looking at you. There's some cool visuals like that. It's also different in that the evil entity can embody other people. Not so much possess them, but create clones of them. That means there are scenes where this or that figure is not actually this or that figure. That adds a lot of suspense. It's a really nice idea to throw in there. And honestly, it's not that much of a departure from what could happen in the first and the second film, so I'll allow it. It's not. I don't really have to suspend my disbelief because this is a supernatural movie where pretty much anything can happen. And after seeing the second movie, yes, anything can happen. I'm okay with that. There are some cool scenes with a parking garage where cars being frozen over, covered in ice and still driving around, ghost cars chasing people. There's one scene where a person comes out of this disheveled corpse just climbing out of a mummified body. That's quite cool. There was a scene that reminded me a bit of, I think it's Dead Heat, where this freezer, the animals that are hanging there to be frozen for, to be used later, they kind of come alive and start wiggling around. Looked a bit like something like from Silent Hill or something like that. It was a quite cool scene. It has a lot of nice things like that, but without indulging in it too much. Actually, thinking about it, there is this one scene where I guess the face comes a bit off. Some of the face comes off. And then in one of the other scenes, I guess you could say the whole face comes off. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the third movie, unlike the second movie, the face comes off a bit. There's a bit of face off. And the acting is not bad. It's actually quite good, especially compared to a lot of the other movies I watch. Even the teenagers, most of the teenagers in this movie are quite good actors and they're quite lovable. Normally teenagers in movies can be quite annoying, not in this one. I should also say that this is an ode to 80s hair. This has so much popped up, fluffy, big, pompous 80s hair. If you really like 80s hair, like this bombastic 80s hair, you can easily give it another half star to this review because you would probably like this movie even more. It has a lot of it, and it is glorious, it is magnificent. I will not pretend that I don't think it's magnificent, because it is glorious. And here is where I will give you my closing remarks on the movie, my closing thoughts. It's a boring movie. Not a lot happens. The first half feels so damn long that actually, when things start happening, I thought there would be 20 minutes of it left. But no, actually, I think the first half is 45 minutes. That's the first 45 minutes, not much happens, and then things really start happening. But it felt so long, the first 45 minutes, that I lost most of my immersion at that point. I had really zoned out when things did start to happen, and even when things do start to happen, it's not that interesting. Poltergeist 2 won me over by being wacky, by having a lot of cool visuals, by still having a good dynamic, having a good story, and just throwing in all these other elements. So that's why I like the second film. The first film is just a really good combination of humor and a really nice family dynamic, and then a thrilling horror story and good effects. It has all the things. It has all the things that make it good. The second film has less drama, or it's less stellar in the drama department. It has less. The sound design is not as good, and it's just a lesser movie in many regards than the first one. But it just ramps up the wackiness of it. And then the third one takes it a notch back, adds a bit more drama, but it just feels a bit hollow. It fails to captivate me, the audience maybe in general, as much as the first one, as the tale itself is not something that it's not really new. You've already seen some of the similar dynamics in the other movies. It doesn't feel fresh in the same way. It's not as strong. It's not as well developed. You don't care as much for the people as in the other movies, I would say. Not to say that they are bad or anything. It's just the way it's done is just lesser. And I think as a standalone movie, it's just a decent horror movie. Not a good movie, but a decent horror movie. But being the third full film in a trilogy always leaves expectations. And it is here where I will say the expectations are not met. This does not live up to the splendor of the first movie, and even the splendor of the second movie. At the end of the day, it's actually quite a fine movie. Not a great one. If you like the first and second one, why not watch the third one? Just don't have your expectations that high. Don't have your hopes that high. And that's where I will end the video. That's my closing remarks. I'm of course not done with the franchise yet, because there is one more movie, there is a remake. Of course there's a remake. So stay tuned if you want to hear my thoughts about the remake. Subscribe if you want to see what else I'm talking about on this channel. Leave a comment if there's something, if there's a movie or franchise you think I should talk about. I'm trying to get back into talking more about horror. I've had a long period where I didn't really talk about horror movies. I'm getting back into that. I do have a lot of ideas myself, but I'm really happy to hear your thoughts as well. It means something to me. Like, if you actually are curious about hearing my thoughts on something, that actually means a lot to me. Like, oh, nice. So yes, yeah. Take care.